Hello and welcome back to COP28, back to the green zone of COP28. I'm delighted to be joined here outside the Extreme Hangout pavilion with Divya Nawale, who is a UN Clean Energy Champion and Global Choices Advisor. Now, energy is the theme of the day. So Divya, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the session you've just come off of. It was a great looking session. Chris Skidmore, the author of the UK Net Zero Review, involved. Talk to us a little bit about what that session was all about and what the key outcomes were.
Yeah, sure. So the session was actually titled Who's Ruling the Roost? Energy versus Politics. And I think it was a very interesting conversation. We had Charles Perry, we had MP Chris Skidmore. We also had the partner for energy at PwC UK, Rob Turner, and an activist from Argentina. And so it really brought out some diverse perspectives of what is really happening and what is the real challenge here? Like, what is the stalemate between the whole energy and politics system, but also understanding who really needs to move the needle forward. And I think the kind of simple summary we had at the end was that we essentially need champions. We need champions in businesses. We need champions in local authorities, as the UK Mission Net Zero report says. We also need champions in the local communities, especially women. And I think more than anything else, we need to champion ourselves. And I think the stalemate will not exist as long as we know that each one of us is really working towards that net zero goal.
Well, I want to bring this back round to yourself then, because I mentioned you're a clean energy champion, global choices advisor. Talk to us a little bit about your mission and the great work that you do that's kind of brought you here to this COP.
Yeah, sure. So I've been a consultant and I really started as a youth activist 10 years ago. So I was also talking on stages like this earlier about what, young people expectations are. But today I work as a consultant for the UN, including UNFCCC. And I also work very closely with Asian Development Bank. So I have a focus a lot in the energy transition itself. I've worked on initiatives where essentially we are looking at the Just Energy Transition Partnership and similar initiatives where there is knowledge sharing and technology transfer across the global north to the global south. And I think in that context, today is Energy Day, and really talking about what is required, because I think 70% of our emissions come from energy as such, and so really the key driver is also has to be technology and energy sector. We talked a little bit about how the supply side needs to move faster, but also the demand side needs to be addressing some of these challenges, so that we're not really causing that shocks to the system where there is demand goes so high that the supply just cannot be reached, and then you have to again jump to fossil fuels rather than looking at plants which can stick to renewables to fill the energy needs of the system. And also not sure how it probably kind of addresses what I do with Global Choices, but it does in a way, because at Global Choices we're focusing on two things right now. We're looking at the various tipping points, and one of the biggest climate shocks that is expected is the Arctic sea ice melt, and essentially we're focusing and doing some advocacy work here with Global Choices on essentially how we can set up a 10-year moratorium in the central Arctic ice ocean. And I think it ties up into the fact that as more emissions rise, that much amount of sea ice melts, and as that melts, the more the heat rises, we need more air conditioning. It's just a cycle, and I think it brings us down to the fact again that we need champions at every level. And so as Global Choices has brought some young women leaders from across global north and global south to really talk about issues that are important, including tipping points, including climate justice, including just transition for the global south.
Yeah, so a lot of work, a lot of amazing work that you do, and we'll maybe come back onto some of your experiences as well in a moment. But I think we have to dig into this kind of topic of the day, energy. I know that the row has been raging on about fossil fuels and whether we should be phasing down or phasing out fossil fuels. I believe the latest version of the text includes, phasing out, the wording of it potentially. What's your view on this in terms of what needs to happen here at this COP over the next few days to really kind of make sure we get the outcome we need with regards to the complete phasing out of fossil fuels?
I think more than anything is the climate finance. It all boils down to how are we getting that, really the funds that are needed to really mobilize projects at the grassroots level and in communities where women and vulnerable populations are struggling and seeing the effects of climate change on the adaptation side, plus also what they can do really in their homes and just in their communities to be able to mitigate as well. So I think it's great to have these conversations at the global negotiation level, but it really needs to translate into climate finance, that not just big numbers are announced, because a number of announcements are coming in terms of funds. Even the Loss and Damage Fund has been pushing forward now with a number of countries really stepping up to it. But I think the challenge remains that how this is going to translate on the ground. And I think we need to address climate finance in a way that it is more accessible to the right people and also is implementable.
Are you pleased with what you've seen in terms of climate finance so far? There's quite a few institutions here and around the COP.
Yeah, something I saw differently from the COP in Glasgow. I saw that there's a lot more private banks as well. So I see Standard Chartered and Barclays also have their own, pavilions and are really doing a lot more work here in the space. And I think that's also good in a way that, we need blended finance and we need that, huge numbers to really flow. But also I think it makes me question about the accountability and transparency of where this money will flow. And so I'm very excited to see how that happens over the next 5-10 years.
Well, I must let you in on a secret, which is that before these kind of interviews, I'll do my research into who I'm kind of going to be speaking with and into the background. And I must say you have the most eclectic and interesting and inspiring kind of background that's kind of brought you here. So I realise this is a difficult question, but given just how much you've been able to kind of travel and experience different parts of the world and the climate and witnessing climate change happening around you, perhaps you could try and kind of consolidate down into a minute or two the experiences that you've had travelling and being able to kind of witness what you've seen over the last couple of years.
So as being an activist 10 years ago to now being a practitioner, I feel like we're having the right conversations now. Earlier, what was only outside, words like just energy transition, words like, gender and, the role of youth, women, children in the energy transition. I think we have come a long way. The words have been put in the text, or at least have representation at events like COP. But I think there's still a long way to really ensuring that these vulnerable populations are really taken care of as such. So I think we need to just go beyond the talk and actually do the work after COPs are done. And I think that's where I see the next 10 years.
Okay, well, Divya, thank you so much. The night is drawing in around us, so I'm sure we've got to get home at some point. Plenty more conversations to be happening here over the next few days, so join us for another one of these interviews very soon.